So we're just going to crack on with the cleanup. So I've said, is there an order that we should think about when cleaning things up in AWS? So are there any general principles here? And here's...
Yes, there's definitely an order to follow when cleaning up AWS resources, especially when dealing with networking components like NAT gateways, EC2 instances, and VPCs. The general principle is to start from the most dependent resources and work your way up to the foundational components, i.e., delete resources in reverse order of creation. Recommended cleanup order 1. Terminate EC2 instances. Any instances running in your VPC, especially those using the NAT gateway, should be stopped and terminated first. 2. Delete the NAT gateway. Before deleting, ensure no instances are actively using it. You must first release the Elastic IP (EIP) associated with the NAT gateway before you can delete the NAT gateway itself. 3. Remove routes and route tables. If you have custom route tables associated with the NAT gateway, such as private subnet routes pointing to the NAT gateway, delete those routes first. Delete any custom route tables after removing the routes. 4. Detach and delete the Internet Gateway, IGW. The IGW must be detached from the VPC before it can be deleted. 5. Delete subnets. Ensure no resources, e.g. EC2 instances, NAT gateway, RDS, etc., exist in the subnets before deleting them. 6. Delete the VPC. At this stage, the VPC should be empty and safe to delete. 7. Release Elastic IPs, EIPs. If you allocated any Elastic IPs, e.g. for the NAT gateway, remember to release them manually. Otherwise, AWS continues to charge you. Key principles for cleanup. Dependency awareness. Always remove dependent resources first, e.g. EC2 instances before subnets. Network cleanup in reverse order. The NAT gateway and its associated resources, routes, subnets, IGW, should be deleted before the VPC. Check for other dependencies. Some resources might have security group associations, IAM roles, or CloudWatch logs that should be reviewed. Billing consideration. NAT gateway and Elastic IPs incur charges even when idle, so removing them early is best. IAM permissions. Ensure you have permissions to delete all resources, e.g. VPC deletions can fail due to security group dependencies. Would you like help crafting an AWS CLI script to automate this cleanup?
Okay, so I was about to just comment on all of that, but actually that line at the end is very tempting. Yes. But so just to comment, when it says think about dependency, it means the things which are dependent, which you rely on other things like we have a walking stick under them, they should go first. So EC2 instances are dependent. They are reliant on a subnet. You can't have an EC2 instance that isn't in a subnet. There's kind of another principle at play, which is, yes, you want to delete the dependent resource first if you have to, because you have to. But on the other hand, if you don't have to, it will be more efficient to delete the bigger resource. So what do I mean by that? Well, if it is possible to just delete a whole VPC and that will just delete all the subnets which make up the VPC in one fell swoop, then obviously it would be rational to do that because it's much more efficient. So I'm going to be on the lookout. So we might call that the efficient deletion principle. I'm going to be on the lookout and try to delete big clumps of things where I can. Obviously, if we can't, we'll have to go back. But if I can delete a route table and in one fell swoop delete all the routes inside it, I'm going to do that, aren't I? I'm not going to individually delete the routes just for the sake of it. So it'd be interesting to see if there are any cases where I can delete the whole thing and thereby delete the components. I'm really only thinking of VPC and subnets and route table and routes there, to be honest. I know that you can't, for example, just delete a VPC and then that will delete all the NAT gateway and the internet gateway. We could try that and see what it says. But you're pretty sure you have to delete the internet gateway then the VPC. Let's see what the script is, though. Yes, please. Here's a structured AWS CLI script to automate the cleanup of your NAT gateway practical. This script follows the correct order of deletion and assumes you want to fully remove the VPC and all associated resources. Script breakdown. Step 1. Identify and terminate EC2 instances. Step 2. Delete the NAT gateway and release elastic IPs. 3. Remove the route table associations and delete the custom route tables. Step 4. Detach and delete the internet gateway now. That comes quite late, doesn't it, after the routes have gone. Delete the subnets, then delete the VPC. Let's take a look at this script. Very colourful. So the shebang /bin/bash. Here we're setting our VPC ID. So we're introducing a variable. Echo starting cleanup for VPC. And then that US dollar and then VPC ID. What we're doing there is grabbing the variable that we made up here. It's VPC_ID. So this whole thing is in speech marks. That's just a string. Echo is a command which means, if you think about what an echo is in a tunnel, echo, it's just repeating what's been set out. So repeat that, which is descriptive. Hash means comment. So this line is a comment, just describing what the code does here. It says terminate all the instances in the VPC. So this is what this code is doing. Again, that echo command, and we put a string after a space. So echo, space, we're terminating EC2 instances. Instance IDs has assigned to it, that's an equals sign, but it's really the assignment operator, has assigned to it US dollar, opening rounded bracket, AWS EC2 describe instances, and that's the command we know and are familiar with, -- filters with parameter, name equals, values equals, -- query, and we're going to the reservations object, all of the instances, and then the instance ID, -- output text. So we've put the whole command into speech marks. If, then, well, let's look at the condition. If what? We've got square brackets, opening square bracket, closing square bracket, and in the square brackets it says -n, and then there's a space after the n, and then in speech marks it says US dollar instance IDs, and we've seen that already. Here it is up here, instance IDs, remember it? So what we're doing is grabbing the output from that command. You can do that. So we're describing the instances. We're interested in a we can feel some particular information. So we're using filters. So the VPC ID, we actually have that actual VPC ID. We grab it from the top. Sorry, here. So we are describing instances, but only ones in that VPC. So we're not going to get all of them back. Maybe we've got hundreds in our account. And then -- query is focusing it. Query is a parameter more for structural focusing in. We're not providing like tangible information that you can feel. It's just structural. We're saying whatever the reservations are, give me all of them. That's why there's a star in square brackets. And then we know that inside that list we have this instances key. It'll say instances ... instances : and we're interested in all of them. And then we get the instance ID. So query, that query parameter -- query is a kind of structural thing. We're not providing any specific information there. It's more about form. It's not content, it's about form. And we're outputting the instance ID. So when and we're saying save that to instance IDs. So when down here we say here's US dollar instance IDs, we're getting what? We're getting the output of the command up there, which is the instance ID. Good. So we're looking at the instances in the VPC and specific. So we're grabbing the instance ID. What does that mean? Well, I think this okay. It's got sh, which was a precursor to bash. So this is what we might call, I think it's a conditional check. So if the -n, I think, just means if there's a value there for instance IDs. We can check that in a moment. Then we're going to do AWS-EC2 terminate instances. That's the next command. -- instance IDs, and again, we're using that variable $, instance IDs, which we've packed up here, primed, or assigned a value to with that equals. Echo, waiting for EC2 instances to terminate. So you can see how echo is used. Obviously, it would be helpful to print that and say, just to let you know, we're waiting for the EC2 instances to terminate. We've done terminate instances, so we want to keep the user informed. So that's how it works. Echo prints something to the console that will help calm the observer. AWS-EC2 wait. Now, even though this is after EC2, it's not actually an AWS EC2 command, that, right? Terminate instances belongs to AWS, it's their command. Describe instances, that's their command, it's part of AWS EC2. Wait isn't. That's why it's in orange, unlike these two commands. It's like echo. So wait, instance terminated, -- instance IDs, maybe that is a command. Instance terminated, perhaps an AWS command. It is in white. And then $, instance IDs, and then FI. So that must be short for finish, FI. So comment, here we're deleting the NAT gateway. So echo deleting NAT gateway IDs, describe NAT gateways, -- filter, name equals values equals, remember it's singular name, values, because it's a many-to-one mapping. One name, and there could be many values for that one name. We have -- query, and then we have this kind of this formal thing, and then -- output, and then a space, and then text. If opening square bracket -n NAT gateway IDs closing square bracket semicolon, then we have a for in loop for NAT in $, NAT gateway IDs, this variable up here. Sorry, up here, that's where we defined it. We gave it a value that was from the command describe gateways. So for NAT in NAT gateway IDs, do semicolon do AWS EC2 delete NAT gateway -- NAT gateway ID $, NAT echo waiting for NAT gateway, and look, we can even use a variable inside the string that we're echoing, waiting for the NAT gateway to be deleted. AWS EC2 wait NAT gateway deleted -- NAT gateway ID $, NAT done FI. So very similar to this block up here, we've got if then, and when we finish the if, we have a semicolon. Again, if then and a semicolon. But there are some differences. With this block down here, we've got a for in loop. So for NAT in $, NAT gateway IDs, do, and then word do. And we don't have the word do at all up here. We don't have a for in loop here. In both cases, we have echo waiting for the EC2 instances to terminate. We have an echo. We have waiting for the NAT gateway to be deleted. And there's two commands overall, so lots of similarities between these blocks. Here we go terminate instances, and then we have this instance terminated. Delete NAT gateway deleted. And we close the block with FI. And you can already see this block is similar. Here we're releasing the elastic IPs. Echo releasing elastic IPs, always begin with an echo. EIP alloc IDs, so use uppercase letters for that variable name. If -n semicolon then for EIP in $, EIP alloc IDs do. So after that semicolon, space, and then do. AWS EC2 release address, that's the command release address, and then -- allocation ID. $, EIP, what's that? Well, that this is when we have a for in loop, this thing here we call a temporary variable. It's like a stage prop, and it can be anything. It's arbitrary, but I think we're referring to that here. So presumably you can't just put EIP. You have to put US dollar EIP, and you can just refer to the temporary variable like that. You don't have to sort of have an assignment operator anywhere. You don't have to have a line where you say EIP equals like we usually do. Okay. But I'm just pointing that out because that is a little bit different. Usually when we refer to a variable with a US dollar, such as US dollar EIP alloc IDs, or even up here, US dollar NAT gateway IDs, we have to have had an assignment to that further up. So NAT gateway IDs, well, we've assigned it here. See that equals sign, NAT gateway IDs. And here we've assigned something to EIP alloc IDs. EIP alloc IDs has assigned to it that. But here we're just saying US dollar EIP, and it's just EIP there. That's all or unless it's somewhere else, but I can't see it anywhere in this script. So, yeah. We've got the describe addresses command here. -- query. Remember, query. People have quibbles with it. Quibble. It sounds like ripple, sort of a when waves go through a material. A ripple. It's sort of a structural change material, isn't it? Well, query, quibble, structural. It is structural. There's no content for the value of -- query. You're thinking of -- filter if you have specific information that you want to find that you can feel that's filter. Addresses, we have a question mark and an association ID equals, which is not the assignment operator. We're checking. So we're saying, is the association ID null? We're asking. That's what equals means. Dot and then allocation ID. So here's the query parameter. That's the value of the query parameter. And what we're doing is saying, I want the allocation ID. It'll be within the addresses object or the addresses key. And we're only interested in it if the association ID is equal to null. That's what it must mean. It says is equal to. Yeah. So the thought might be that the reason we want an EIP that isn't associated is we're trying to identify the one that is on its own, because we have, after all, deleted the NAT gateway. Okay, so I think that's why we've got this. That's what's going on here with this question mark association ID. Okay, different words, association and allocation. So association is a relationship between the NAT gateway and the EIP. Allocation is just the EIP itself. So we're saying we're checking, is the value of addresses something where is there a key within addresses such that the value of association ID is null? If there is, let's proceed and grab that allocation ID, and we're going to output it, and the value of this -- output parameter is text. Okay, so all of this here is using this describe addresses command with the various parameters to pack value, which will be remember, we're precision targeting an allocation ID into EIP alloc IDs. And then we're saying for EIP, that could just be anything for in EIP alloc IDs, because it could be a list. That's why we're using a for in loop. There could be lots of them. For those things, we're going to do for each of them. Okay, it's a loop. For everything in that list of allocation IDs, do this. Do release address. Okay, get rid of it. I don't want it on my account. So that's what that command is about. Release address. Give it back to AWS. And you do need to provide an allocation ID with that command. Well, fine. Go and grab that from here. Just use a temporary variable. Done. And then FI. Don't forget if, then FI. FI presumably for finish. 4, delete the root table associations and the custom root tables. 5, detach and delete the internet gateway. 6, delete the subnets. And then 7, delete the VPC. And then finally echo cleanup complete. And these blocks, they're all pretty similar. I don't think I need to go through them. We always echo with some descriptive text, have this variable, environment variable in uppercase letters. We use the assignment operator. Then we must have the US dollar, and we pack the AWS command inside rounded brackets. So there we go, and there's the closing rounded bracket. It's always the same. So we pack the command in rounded brackets, and then we use an if-then block. So how to use this? Well, you need to replace VPC ID at the top with your actual VPC ID. You do need to change it a little bit. Save the script as cleanupnatgateway.sh, and then all you need to run is chmod +x cleanupnatgateway.sh /cleanupnatgateway.sh. What does the -n mean in the script? The -n flag in this script is used within an if statement. So we'd have it here in the square brackets. What does -n do? -n checks if a string is non-empty, which is a posh way of saying full. If the variable, US dollar instance IDs in this case, if it contains any value, the condition evaluates to true. Okay, if it contains any value, it's true. So we're just checking that there is something filled in for US dollar instance IDs. If there is, bang a semicolon there and continue. So, for example, if there are EC2 instances in the VPC, instance IDs has assigned to it this value, which is 2 IDs separated by space. If, and then we put the actual content of the check in square brackets, if instance US dollar instance IDs after -n, then echo instances exist. Finish. Since instance IDs is not empty, the script proceeds to terminate instances. And so if you had instance IDs has assigned to it just some empty speech marks, then of course the script will skip over this termination step. So that's why we use this if-then. You want to check, is instance IDs empty? And in this case it is. We've got these blanked out square brackets. So we're going to print instances exist. Or rather, we're not. We're not even going to get to the then. Yeah, we're not going to get to we're not going to do it. Why is -n used in the cleanup script? It prevents the AWS CLI commands from running with empty arguments. Avoids unnecessary errors like an error occurred, invalid instance ID dot not found when calling the terminate instances operation. It ensures the script only runs deletion commands when there are actual resources to delete. I'm using Windows command prompt. Considering all the responses you've given so far, what might I have to adapt? How do I actually make use of this script, given that I am using Windows command prompt? See, everything is difficult. Yeah. I don't want to use PowerShell. It's bad enough as it is with all these overlapping technologies. I'm just not using it today. So PowerShell is built into Windows command prompt. Is that what you're saying? I thought not. Not exactly. PowerShell is a separate command line shell from Windows command prompt, but it is built into Windows itself. How they differ. Windows command prompt, it's the older command line interface from DOS. Use commands like dir, copy, del, and basic scripting with .bat files. But it doesn't support complex scripting like loops or AWS CLI JSON processing easily. PowerShell. It's a more advanced shell built on .NET. It uses commandlets like get command, remove item, and write host. Supports objects, loops, error handling, JSON parsing, and more. It's recommended for the AWS CLI scripting on Windows. Okay, so let's end it there. I'm going to use Windows command prompts.